Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a chilly January 29th morning as we're reporting this. And I'm with candidate Dan Rosebud, who is running for the Commissioner of Labor position in this year's Democratic primary. Dan, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's a little cold, but I'm getting there. I'm getting used to it now, I guess. It's been cold enough long enough now where I'm just kind of getting used to it. So that's all right. I don't like it, but can't do anything about it, right? So
Yeah, Georgia
yeah.
has we get all the weather, we get all the temperatures. A little bit of the north, a little bit of the south, so we get some
Right.
really good heat in the summertime too. So
Yeah, and as I get older, I prefer the heat
you
for
prefer the
sure.
heat?
Yeah, you don't know that yet, but it's coming. So anyway, I'm glad you could make it today, and glad we have a chance to talk and let the voters get to know you a little bit. So what I typically do is at the beginning, I'll just let the candidate introduce themselves. So I'll turn it over to you for 2 or 3 minutes. Give us your background, where you come from, family, education, whatever you want to talk about. The camera is yours.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Daniel Rosebud. I go by Rosebud. It's a family last name. I'm originally born in Liberty City, Miami. I moved to Georgia in 1995 along with my mom. My mom was a police officer for Dade County. She made a career change where she went into social work, and we hit the highway and came to Georgia in 95. My mom
Mhm.
started to work with the Department of Community Service here in DeKalb County, and she worked there until she retired about 23 years later. And so I essentially had all my formative years here in Georgia. I went through elementary, middle, and high school here. I graduated from Alonzo A. Krim High School it sits on the Atlanta DeKalb border.
Mhm.
It they were a great resource for the community. They offered night school, non-traditional, so GED as well as comprehensive and traditional high school. So I ended up transferring there my ninth or 10th grade year, and was able to essentially graduate. Um, a lot of my earliest working memories were through workforce development department. So every summer, um, other kids that I knew that were a little bit older, maybe 14, between 14 and 16, would go down to the workforce department every summer, show their report cards. And if you got a good report card, you were able to participate in the summer youth and work program. And so the year that I turned 14, which was like 2004, I took my report card down there, and was able to get my first job. And so one of my earliest experiences was with Clifton Springs Medical Center. It was in the same network of mental health and health clinics that my mom worked in. So it was in that DeKalb County health center system. But I was able to support WIC and checkups for babies and moms down at the local health center. I went on to do more of that work, really falling in love with community service and outreach, um, until I also found myself needing some of those same services. And so, upon graduating high school, I experienced some houselessness, and my mom always kept me connected to programs just like those workforce programs. And so I ended up engaging a program called Year Up Atlanta in some of their earliest days here in the South. They were a program that stemmed from, I believe, New York originally, but they really had a strong presence on the West Coast and up northern in New York, where they really taught business communication and finance. Here in Georgia, they took on the topic of technology and business, and I engaged their program, really focusing on business communication and project management. Oh, excuse me, my sinuses
Oh,
are
trust me, I sympathize entirely. Mine have been acting up too. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I apologize for my nasally voice. I have a slightly different sound, but yeah, engaged their program for business communication, computer software, and eventually pursued a certification in project management. And so prior to me ever getting a degree, I was able to attain a project management license. I attained my project management license when I was 21. So I graduated high school between 17 and 18, engaged college for a little bit, experienced some houselessness, uh, went back into leveraging workforce development programs to reconnect myself, and engaged year up, got my certification by 20. I spent some time in retail for a while. Worked in retail, worked tip wage jobs at restaurants, and up until about 2014, I engaged, retail as my career path.
Mhm.
Um, Up until the point where I started to work with organizations like United Way. United Way had come around and they were trying to really recreate the success that programs like Europe were having with students like me. And so I left retail after engaging United Way as a youth council member, and I decided I really wanted to consult nonprofit youth and workforce programs. I learned something about myself while working with United Way, that this whole thing about being a disconnected youth, someone who's described as 16 to 24, which I was at the time. 2014, I actually turned 24.
Mhm.
So between the time that I engaged Europe and the time that I got to work with United Way, I was the definition of this young person with all this potential who had by chance been disconnected from work and or school, right? And they were using my success points to better inform programs within the metro Atlanta, the greater Atlanta area, actually. So the five county metro area. And our goal was really to use our lived experience to inform quality in programs. And from there, I was picked up nationally with an initiative called Opportunity Youth United. They were working within the Aspen Institute's Forum for Youth Investment Network. And there I started to learn what it meant to advocate for young adults who were disconnected from these opportunities at the national level. So started my work informing programs at the local level here in Atlanta, went on to inform national models for this work. Um, and from that point, I started to be a name in these national rooms as a previous opportunity youth that was able to inform the wider structure of what these programs should look like. I started to work with the Center for Law and Social Policy class as they formed their own youth groups to support this work. And I became an administrative advocate where I chaired a committee that essentially worked with uh, legislative agencies and other agencies to really inform how new policies and laws would affect young people once they were implemented. So for me, one of the things was that the WIOA, or Workforce and Opportunity Investment Act, had not been reauthorized for years, and so states were essentially offering funding and support for these programs purely voluntarily. There wasn't any federal law or anything really forcing investment into the types of programs that helped us. So one of the biggest pushes was to how can we reauthorize the language for workforce programs. And so I started to support a program called, or a campaign called, the Reconnecting Youth Campaign. And essentially that was me working with congressional and senatorial members to reauthorize the language and to further fund initiatives nationally for programs that addressed opportunity youth issues. So it was we would go around and do some legislative advocacy, some administrative advocacy during appropriation periods throughout the year. So really, I guess the main time that I was in DC probably was between June and July during appropriation. So helping to talk to congressional members about why they should reauthorize this language and why they should continue to support. Back here at home, my main people were John Lewis, as well as Lucy McBath and David Scott. Those were because I lived within the metro Atlanta area. I lived within the 05 district. John Lewis was
Right.
my congressman, so he naturally was the main person that I liaison with. Uh,
Hmm.
but Lucy McBath, at that time, I believe that she was representing a little bit farther west, so Douglasville, more of that area, and then
Right.
David Scott being one of the senators, because we were also trying to create a caucus, a youth caucus in DC, and we needed a senator to chair that or to be a part of that committee. And so David Scott
Right.
was one of our primary supporters too around that opportunity youth work. I digress. My work and my life really stems from workforce development. I, at times where I found myself homeless or jobless, I re-engaged those same networks to find permanency. That slowly shaped my education. I went on to study business and labor studies as an associate's. And then I went on to study general psychology at Georgia State, really focusing on organizational and industrial psychology as my topic of interest, with plans to continue on in international affairs, science, and technology, public policy, with hopes to one day have my JD. And
Right.
so my path has really been leveraging my background. Um, First, I had to fare as a young adult with just certification, someone who was able to attain livable wages through, you know, workforce development and non-traditional licensure to the point that I could actually afford to put myself through traditional college. And then I went on to continue to pursue uh, education that would allow me to support others that found themselves in similar situations.
Yeah. Thank you. You got a lot of background there on how you got. I missed that tells a good story about why I think you're running for commissioner of labor. It's kind of right up your I think you're right up your alley, right up your wheelhouse about the stuff that you've been dealing with your whole working successfully through the ladder of all these programs to lift yourself
Yeah,
up and that sort of. Is
yeah.
that true? Would that be the case? You think?
Definitely the case. I think for a long time, I won't say that I was in denial. I think ultimately when I graduated high school, and I lost my dad that same year that I graduated because essentially I went to high school and then I missed a year because of the housing crash. My mom lost the house and she was unable to really um, keep up a space for all of us. My mom had 6 children, and plus she was aging herself. And so I found myself kind of hoisted out into life sooner than I thought. It was unexpected, right?
Yeah. Right.
And it took me out of school to where I returned to school. I was a good student and I was on my track to graduating. I ended up having to get my GED because they wanted to put me back. And I was like, no, I'm ready for college now. But Alonzo A. Krim, my counselor whispered to me, well, there's another option. And I'm like, I'm loud and proud about it. I'm like, whatever the option is, I have to like be able to get a job and
Right.
nobody's taking care of me. So I don't have the mental capacity to go back a grade and successfully make it again. Like I just need to take the graduation test now. And so I got to a point where I really grabbed a hold of this identity that I would always go a non-traditional route. And so college wasn't initially my thought. I thought I would always have to kind of hustle, right? And be
Right.
the guy that kind of created something out of nothing. And I got comfortable with that idea up until the point where I did start to work with United Way and I found out that there was a working title for what I went through, right? someone that had a highly eventful life, someone
Mhm.
who found themselves underemployed a lot of the times. It wasn't that I couldn't find a job, it was that either I was too young to attain the type of job that would pay rent, or I didn't have the formal education that a lot of these companies said they wanted. I had the experience, but I did not have the degree.
Right.
And then only then did I rationalize, like, oh, I have to go through college. Like, this is what I have to do, only to make it easier for people who choose to go my route or have to go my route um, by force, right? No one should be made to kind of couch surf and do these things when they actually have the audacity to try. So yeah, I think through navigating and through having to advocate for myself a lot of the times in these rooms alone, it made me fall in love with policy. It made me, or allowed me to understand, I was trying to fix things because I was learning from the ground up. So I kept trying to
Right.
fix things where I was, only until I found out these things are trickling down. And
Right.
then I started to aim higher. And I knew for me to stay in those rooms that I had to be competitive. And so I've always been about my issue. Like, I still think that a person should have the liberty, if you don't want to engage traditional college, you shouldn't have to, if that's not what you want, or if that's not what is, viable for your life.
Right.
Um, but then there also has to be someone in these rooms advocating for your journey. And few people in these rooms have lived this journey in order to speak truth to it. So I agree. I agree.
Oh, that's good. What do you say? What do you think, as a labor commissioner? What do you think your maybe your two top issues specifically would be if you're elected to be labor commissioner?
So I wrote some issues down, which is, wage theft, safety, and
Hmm.
then just, being able to help lead Georgians through this transition to AI and the whole world of automation and algorithmic jobs. I understand
Right.
those things well, because I didn't only study project management and business and psych, but I also studied innovation and org change. And so I've been watching Georgia transition, but I also currently work for Georgia Tech now. I work for the Center for 21st Century Universities, and we focus on AI innovation as well as digital credentialing and non-traditional learners. And so I'm currently in a space that is pushing forward solutions for non-traditional learners. So the idea of helping to usher people through this grand change is something that I believe that I am equipped to do. But I think there are not traditional, but there are some nuances to this office that also bring me to the work. I understand the Southern Economic Development Plan that Georgia and other Southern states have been under for years. I understand the strategy of a right to work state and how that may create attractiveness to businesses to be here. But I also understand the growing wealth, training, access gaps that form because of it. And I want to say that my top issue is to really address the balance of power. I work nationally. When I worked with the Center for Law and Social Policy, my topic was administrative advocacy. So there were other committees like legislative advocacy, health and well-being, and other topics. But my thing was administrative advocacy. So it was really about how do you navigate policy once laws and things are made, right? So if you didn't have an opportunity to participate in the voting, or you don't agree with what's happening, how do you still survive and navigate, and gain resources where maybe the playing field is not even? There is some reverse advocacy that I want to do in this office between the governor's office workforce development and the workforce development boards, where policy and legislation are heavily influenced, versus the office for the Department of Labor, where my job will be to really enforce and interpret those laws. to support workers and families. So I think that there are some, my biggest issue is like, who is actually advocating for workers at that table with the governor and the many mechanisms that shape our economic landscape. But then how do I build power regardless of who's here in office? That is my issue that I would love to focus on with unions. So regardless who's in office, how do I leverage my role to create space for unions to come in and use the office to organize? If the commissioner's job is to maintain a balance between workers and businesses and ensure that there is no strikes and there is nothing damaging happening between that relationship, how do I create an inviting space where the unions and the affiliates that do support workers can come in and educate workers, and they can also build the capacity that they need to operate regardless of who's in the seat. So I also think that's a part, like, how do I mend the relationship between our workers, unions, and businesses here in the state? But two, there are some things happening in the space of not AI, but automation and platforms. So we have this Mandani, even just recently in New York, just declared that people who work for platforms, delivery platforms, grocery platforms, should get a minimum wage of, or not minimum wage, but they should be paid at least $21, $22 an hour, right? Uh, Here in Georgia, algorithms, companies that are like Uber, they still forcefully classify people as contractors. There are, we're unsure if wage theft is happening there, right?
Right.
Our federal and state laws, they set a floor for what minimum wage should be. But because these algorithms or these types of models are able to or misclassify individuals legally, because our laws and our policies have not caught up, the floor is even disappearing, right? The algorithm makes it uncertain for you about how much your minimum pay will be. And then the promise of tips, once you get to the customer's house, the customer may or may not want to pay a tip. So there's uncertainty about the tips. And then there's uncertainty if your algorithm will give you enough jobs or gigs to actually make, ends meet. That's a situation that has not been addressed in state or federal policy just yet, right? States have to take that on individually. And then the Department of Labor has to interpret law in a way where these arbitrations or these mediation sessions between these workers can actually set a precedent and maybe push things forward. I studied mediation, I studied arbitration, studied these things separately and together in school. And I think none of the others that are running really have this nuance of thought or the understanding of how to manage up towards the governor's office and manage down towards mediating this relationship between business owners, unions, and workers.
Right. Well, thanks. You've hit several of our questions here. I appreciate that, and very detailed answers on what you plan to do, what your vision is, and I like that a lot. So we've got the sort of the issues and all that aside. Let's talk a little bit about the politics of it. How do you see tackling running a statewide race in a state that is as big and diverse as Georgia? It's a very vague question, I know, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things that primary voters kind of want to know. They want to know a little bit about how you see running a campaign effectively and that sort of thing. So just in general, without giving away secrets or anything like that, what do you see as far as running a campaign goes, to a successful campaign at the statewide level?
Yeah, and there's no secrets about it. I don't want to be clandestine about anything. I think I've been an advocate my whole life, so being a politician is a little bit different for me
Right.
in idea. I want to continue to be an advocate. I want to continue to always lead with transparency. Um, I have some experience with the size of Georgia. So I was appointed to the Department of Community Affairs Balance of State Continuum of Care Board to help distribute housing funding. So we administered a competitive grant process for community service agencies, or rather community-based orgs. So I'm very familiar with the scope of Georgia and
Mhm.
how it's divided up between regions, super regions, counties, and cities. We're one of the most unique places in the world. I think we're one out of three places in the world that still has unincorporated land within our incorporated state. So us, California, and then there's some place out of the country, I forget where. um, so I also understand the kind of unique dynamics that we have, in contrast to other states in our country. Um, I also worked the 2020 election for Biden, and I also did the senatorial race for Ossoff and Warnock. And my work was credited in Time Magazine for bringing out the youth vote. And so you'll see some of that. And so I've engaged the state more than once in something like this, but just never for myself. I think where my strategy comes in at is I wanted to first make sure, because I understand that people are attacking candidates with my viewpoints. I wanted to make sure I was compliant. I wanted to make sure that everything was running tight. And so it took me a while to even decide that I was running, and to see if I could do it on a small team, on a more smaller team. My idea of engaging, I'm reaching out to every network that I've been a part of. So the NAACP network, my fraternal network, my school network, the networks of uh, committees that I've set on. Um, my idea is to form a competent and solid conversation and feed that conversation through these networks, as well as meet people where they are. So I'm looking to partner with people who do have a regional network, like a Goodwill, or um, someone who already engages workers where they are, and see if I can visit during events and times, and really meet people, shake hands, and have a conversation, and really learn as I go about some of the personal problems that people are having. But then also just engage in very smart tools, being able to design very simple conversations and get them into the right hands. I'm also thinking about engaging high school youth and asking them to help ensure that their families are registered to vote, and that they are aware of all the candidates' platforms and the issues that we're running on. I want to run a very plain conversation kind of campaign. I don't want this to be about ideology, although I am versed and prepared to have a policy conversation. Oh, excuse me. I am versed and prepared to have a policy conversation. Um, but
So you're
then,
frozen just a second. You're okay now. Go ahead.
okay, I apologize. Someone
No,
called.
it's okay.
Um, and I was saying, like, I'm not looking to run an ideological campaign.
Right.
Although I am versed in policy, we can have a policy conversation. We can talk about the history of Georgia. I grew up here, but I also studied the state, and so we can have that conversation. I think that others are running on this idea of administration. I can administrate with the best of them. I have a degree in both psychology and business, right? And so I've worked at the level of national director. I've worked at the level of a program director here just at an organization. And so administrating, updating systems, these things come very naturally to me. Uh, we can have that conversation though about running the department more efficiently. But I think my real strong suit comes in at being able to ride the ladder. I'm able to have the policy conversation. I'm able to have the administration conversation, but nobody is really talking about how to balance all of these things in order to deliver permanency to families. I really want to have that conversation with people. What does it look like uh, to gain permanency in the ever changing market? What does it look like for young people who are entering the workforce? Who are just exiting college, who are needing to work while finishing high school, while finishing college, who, multi-generational homes. I understand what it is to live with your great grandma, your grandmother, and
Right.
also have children yourself, right? And need to be the head of the house. Who is offering flexibility and opportunity to these people, because that is who Georgia is. We are multi-generational. I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was gonna say your camera froze just for a second. There you go. You're back. Okay.
We are multi-generational families here in the South, and especially here in Georgia. And so
Yeah.
my idea is really to have a plain conversation, to ask people to really consider their interest. I think a lot of times we're left to vote against our interests, sometimes because we're not informed well enough. Other times is because someone is actively misinforming us, and we only realize once opportunity is off of the table. How do I have a grounded conversation and really beg of people to vote for their interests, because I'm here for the interests of the people.
Okay. Well, good. Dan, you've covered a lot of ground here. You've explained your background and what your vision is. I think you've done it very well, and I appreciate all the time and effort you put into that. I always like to give the candidate at the end just a minute or two to give your little stump speech on why we should vote for Dan Rosebud to be the next labor commissioner. So we're going to close out by letting you do that. So take it away.
My name is Daniel Rosebud. I'm running for Georgia Labor Commissioner. You should come out and vote for me because I am putting families first. I understand the nuances of both policy and advocacy, as well as safety, and trying to put families back to work. And so I think you should vote for me because I am here for you.
Dan, thank you so much. I enjoyed your talk. I enjoyed your learning about your life experience. I think it was very interesting how you've been able to work your way into the position that you're in now. And I appreciate that kind of go getting effort from anybody. And you're an example for all of us to keep working our way through the problems that life throws at us and just keep working your way up. I think you've done that really well so far. And I tell this to every candidate, I appreciate anybody who has the guts to step forward to run for a statewide office. That takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of your time. So I appreciate that. So thank you so much for your time here today too.
Thank you so much, Tom. I
All
appreciate
right.
you.
See you around. I hope to see you around soon. You're always welcome to come up our way when
Yes.
we're having events and just look at Mobilize. You find our events. Come on up anytime you want.
Thank you. You said mobilize.
Yeah, Mobilize is the just type in Mobilize Democratic Party of Georgia. You'll find it on the website. So thank you so much, Dan. I'm going to end
Thank you
the
so much.
report.